Alright everybody, welcome to another session for Code Vita, and as promised we are going to do a lot of Code Vita videos that have especially come from Mock Vita. So let me just adjust myself. Yeah, so we're going to do a lot of videos that have a lot of solutions that have come from Mock Vita. And for those of you who want to dive directly into the solution of this question called lazy student, just probably forward about 3-4 minutes. But before that, I'll just make a couple of announcements. We're going to discuss this question called Mock Vita lazy student. So let me just move there. So we're going to do that. Just a couple of announcements before that. This is the third in the series of this Mock Vita questions. We have already covered prime Fibonacci. You can check it in the playlist. Television stats, again, you can check in the playlist. Lazy students we are doing right now. We're discussing it right away. And so, just subscribe to this channel and like this video to get updates on the other Mock Vita questions as well. This is ongoing in our series of sessions that we're doing. So we have completed more than 3 assessments so far. In fact, this 3rd July 2020, we're doing the assessment number 5, and that is a public assessment. That is, if you're a student who's paid for the course, who's not paid for the course, anybody can come and sign up for the assessment number 5. We're just doing it to help you prepare better. So you can sign up for assessment number 5 and you participate in it. All you need to do is sign up on this link. That is sorry for that. Yeah, you'll sign up on this link over here, and you will get the alert for assessment number 5. So yeah, just sign up over there. We just completed our doubt clearing session as well. That was meant for 30th June, so that's also been completed. So those of you who are preparing for zone 1, it's really, time is running by really quickly. Make sure that you practice as much as possible, and for zone 2 you still have some more time. We'll hopefully try to share some of the zone 1 questions, or at least see the solution approaches of zone 1 questions when you go for zone 2, although there's hardly ever any overlap between them. So all the zone 1 students who really need to prepare very well and just not have got the time, we've got a discount for you. Please use the code CodeVita July. It's valid only till 5th July, 5th July being a Sunday. So 11:59 p.m. 5th July, our 2,999 course for Code Vita is now reduced to 1,999 if you use this coupon code called Code Vita-July. Sorry for that. Yep. And if you want to get more such updates and always know what's happening for the Edist platform and any updates, do join our Telegram channel. It's also mentioned in the link below. So yeah, as I said, if you want to dive directly into the question, around the 3-minute mark is the place to be at. So now we'll go directly into the question. It's a Mock Vita question called lazy student. A lot of you students thought that this question is simple and it's not that tricky. It is a little bit tricky because the question itself is not difficult to understand, but the implementation is a little bit difficult. So I'll show you where you can access it on the Edist platform. When you open up the Edist platform, this is what it looks like, and you have to go to the math module. You can find this in the math module over here. So you can find that here. And just by the way, I'll go back. This is the mock test number 5. When you sign up, you will see this thing as well, mock test number 5, which is going to happen on 3rd July. When it's time, you can click start now to actually start it. So those of you who are planning to give the mock test 5, sign up as soon as possible. Right. So this is maths. I go to numbers, and there's this question called lazy student over here. Right. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up this lazy student question, and okay. So let's read the question first. It's a very simple maths question. So it is basically, there is a test of algorithms. Teacher provides a question bank consisting of n questions. So totally there are n questions, and guarantees all the questions in the test will be from this question bank. Due to lack of time and his laziness, just like most of us, Kodu only practiced m questions, right? So he only practiced m questions. However, there are t questions in the question paper selected randomly. So this is a scenario we all face when we are going for our exams also. I have prepared a certain number of problems. There are going to be a certain number of randomly selected problems from a pool of n problems, right? So there is going to be n problems from which m could be, m is what I have studied, t is what will be selected, right? And the thing is, for me to pass, I have to get at least one of the t problems, and I can only solve the problem if it's from m. So basically there should be at least one question from m that is also in t, right? Otherwise I will not pass. Now I wish our exams were had such a passing marks, but it is what it is. So you have to get at least one question in T, then you can pass. So what is the probability that Kodu will pass the test, right? So in this question, the probability is expected to be, these are the constraints which will play a huge important role in our solution, but we'll just come to it. So here the output is supposed to be in this format. Let's just read the input first. First line contains a single integer k denoting the number of test cases. Fine, very simple. First line of each test case contains 3 integers separated by space n, t and m. What does that mean? So n is the total number of questions available, t is the number of questions that will appear in the exam, and m is the questions that I have prepared. Okay. Now this is another part where most of the people got confused. If probability is p by q, where p and q are co-prime, print p into multiplicative inverse of q modulo this big number, which is 10 raised to 9 plus 7. Okay, where multiplicative inverse of x is a multiplicative inverse of x under modulo so and so, right? Okay. All right, so there's a lot of different concepts here. Number one is that as it is when we see multiplicative inverse of x, we are not sure what to do. On top of that, this is a probability question and we are not really sure of our probability. So how do we go about solving it? Okay, what I'll first do is I'll help you out with how to even solve the question, right? So we'll first figure out, let's forget this multiplicative inverse of x part for now. Okay, so let's forget this part for now. Let's first see what's the logic of the question, and then we'll come to what this output is, and you'll see that this output actually flows very naturally, right? Why they have asked for this? It's a very natural thing that they've asked for. Okay, so let's first understand the question and how to solve the question in itself. Okay, let's say we are given, let's say these are all the questions that are there, right? So there are totally n questions. Say there are 10 questions, and the questions are like this. There are some m questions from m, capital M, and small x questions from capital X. Okay, so these are the bunch of questions, they need not be in this sequence like m1, m2, m3 and all. This is like m1, x1, m2, x2. It could be like that. It's just basically just assume that there are a line of questions. Some of those questions I have prepared for, other questions I have not prepared for, right? Now in this scenario, let's take some examples. So let's say n is 10. That means totally there are 10 questions here, some of which I prepared for, some of which I have not prepared for. Let's say m is 6. Okay, so that means I have actually done a good job and I have prepared for 6 questions in these 10 questions. I prepared a majority of the questions, right? 6 questions. And x is 4. That means that the remaining part has to be 4, because total there are 10 questions. Some of it are 6 questions, that is the ones I know, and the remaining are 4. Okay, and t is 5. What was t? T is the number of questions that will be selected, that will come in the question paper. Now if t is 5, what is the probability that I will know at least one question? Well, there are only 4 unknown questions, right? So imagine you take up all of the unknown questions. So there are only 4 unknown questions. The remaining questions will always be from something I know. So either I can choose 4 unknown questions, or 3 unknown questions, or 2 unknown questions, or 1 unknown question, or 0 unknown question. But I will always choose at least one known question, right? So in such a scenario, probability of passing is 1. Yay, I will pass. Okay, so this gives us our first edge case. Even we are getting first to the major case, what we can say is very easily that if n minus m, okay, is, or rather if you want to say that if n minus m is less than t, okay, which means that it is not at all possible for me to select t questions from the remaining part, from the part that I have not prepared, because m is what I have prepared, n minus m is what I have not prepared, right? If n minus m is less than t, I can be 100% sure that probability is 1, right? I can be sure of that part. Now is it possible that I did not prepare at all? Yes. If you look at the constraints, and let's start looking at the constraints now, m can be 0 less than equal to m less than equal to 100. So that's the second edge case, right? So the second edge case is that if m, sorry for that, one second. The second one is if m equal to 0, then probability is 0, all right, and we fail at that point. Okay, so if m is equal to 0, that means I didn't prepare for even a single question, so the probability is 0 at that point, right? Okay, now let's look at the main case. Okay, let's look at the main case. And what would the main case be like? Let's look at something like this. Let's say n is 10, m is 6, I prepared for 6, and x is 4, again as same as previously. X means the questions I have not prepared for. Obviously if there are 10 questions, of which 6 I have prepared, 4 I have not prepared for. And t is 3, means I will select 3 questions for the question paper. Now let's look at the configurations possible, right? I could select all 3 from x, that is the ones I don't know at all. I could select 1 from the one I know, and 2 from the ones I don't know. I could select 2 from the ones I know. It could be whichever, but just some 2 from the ones I know, and 1 which I don't know. It could be x1 or x2 or x3 or x4, but just one of them I don't know, or all 3 could be the ones that I do know, right? So these are all of the possible scenarios in which I can do, and in these scenarios are the ones that I will always pass in, because there is at least one m over here, 1m, 2m or 3m, right? So there's at least one m, and m being one question that I know. So this is the part where things will get a little tricky. So I want you to take a pen and paper and start following along what I'm saying. We took the two edge cases where you will always end up selecting a known question, or you will never end up selecting a known question. The second case being that if m is 0, right? So you have not prepared for anything, else you will always fail. Your probability is 0. Let's come here. There are the case where I could select either no questions that I know or some questions that I know. Now this is the case 1m, 2m and 3m. So in this case my probability of passing is actually 3 by 4, right? And it's actually not even 3 by 4. I'm sorry for that. It's not 3 by 4 because the way of selecting x questions is different, right? So I should be able to select 3 x questions, right? And there are 4 questions. So there are that many number of ways in selecting. So it's not 3 by 4. Please don't go for that. But what I'm saying is there are these 4 possible configurations, of which only one configuration exists in which I will fail. All the remaining 3 configurations, how many such configurations are there is a different story, but the remaining 3 configurations, any version of those configurations I will pass. Okay, so it could be m1 and x1 x2, or m1 and x2 x3, or m1 and x3 x4, or m2 and x1 x2, m2 and x2 x3, m2 and x3 x4, and so on, right? Similarly over here also m1 m2 x1, m1 m2 x2, and so there are multiple ways in which we can do that. Okay, now in such a question that where we have given at least choose at least one or number of ways in which at least one correct option exists, right? In such a question, in probability generally what you try to do is try to do 1 minus not choosing. Okay, that means that if you figure out how many such are there, if you figure out the probability of failing, which is easier to figure out, that is, in that case there will be no known questions. That means always select unknown questions. If you find the probability of failing, that is, the probability of failing will be just this configuration, right? In this configuration, no matter what I choose, I am going to be failing. So if you find the probability of failing, if you do 1 minus the probability of failing, you will get the probability of passing. Okay, and let's write that down into an equation. So let's look at this one by one. Just follow along the equations. You don't need to. I'll just be explaining the equations one by one. So just keep looking at the equations, and I'll explain to you. So what I said was we'll do 1 minus probability of failing, right? That's what I said. We'll do 1 minus the probability of failing, which means that 1 minus picking all of the x's, right? So here it means 3 x's, or generally all of the t questions that I pick have to be x. Okay, now let's say I have some x number of questions. I have to pick t questions from them. Okay, so he wants to pick I want to pick t questions from them, and in this t questions all of them have to be x, right? Number of ways of doing that is xct. This is just another way of representing NCR. So it is xct. Okay, that is from x I want to pick t. I knew I was going to pick t, but I'm saying that all of those t being x, it is xct. That is, what are the number of ways in which all of a number of ways of selecting t elements such that all of them are x. So that will be xct. And the number of ways of selecting any t from the entire n is nct, where t is the number of questions I'm selecting. So this xct by nct will give me a fail option, right? Which will fail me, right? xct by nct will fail me. Hence 1 minus xct by nct will be passing, right? So this will be the probability of passing. Now this is simple maths. I mean, if you've done probability, then this makes sense. Now a lot of you will ask me how much probability should I know before coming to CodeVita. You just need to, if you were good at or if you are good at those 11th 12th questions where you would get questions like number of ways in which I can pick a face card from a deck of cards, or number of ways I can pick a spade, or numbered card, or number of ways I can pick a 9, like those kind of counting questions. If you're decent at that, then you should be decent enough with any probability question that comes in CodeVita. So if you would have just applied your mind here also, you would have got this equation. So we got this equation here. Now the question transforms into, I have this. Now the question becomes, how do we calculate very big NCR? Okay, and I'll just go back to the question. Why is it a very big NCR? Because if you look at it, the number of questions, n can be 1000, t can be 1000. So you can actually have something like n 1000 C 800, right, or 1000 C 200. You can actually have that. Okay. Not only that, the weird thing is m is also big, right? So m is also big over here. That's also fine. But the weird thing is there are, in one single test file, there can be up to 10,000 test cases, right? So if you are, let's say, calculating n factorial by r factorial into n minus r factorial, right, which is NCR, right? So that is the formula for NCR. If I'm calculating NCR, which is n factorial by r factorial and into n minus r factorial, and factorial if you're taking n amount of time, then you are going to run out of time easily. Okay, you're going to get a time limit exceeded, because in each 10,000, let's say even if you're calculating 100 factorial, you're doing 100 times, right? And that will help you easily reach 10 raised to 6, right? Because it's 10 raised to 4 already, and that will cause you to reach 10 raised to 6. Now imagine you're going 1000. Even if you just go 1000 factorial even once, right, in one of these, that means if you're going 1000 factorial in each of them, then you will reach 10 raised to 7, which is just not happening. As a rule of thumb, always you should try to finish all of your calculations and all of your space in 10 raised to 6 time. Okay. So this causes us a problem, and this gets us thinking about, there must be a better way of calculating NCR, and there is a better way. In fact, for CodeVita, I highly recommend that you do follow a certain set of tutorials that we have, and that's what I want to also share with you. Just give me a second. Yeah, so this set of tutorials is a must to solve this question called lazy student. There are two tutorials which we have, which are in depth, which is understanding modular arithmetic, because remember, in this question we have to do a modulo inverse, which I'll come to in just a minute. So understanding modular arithmetic and also calculating large NCR values. Okay, both of these are a must to crack a question like lazy student. Okay, so it's a must to crack that. Now if you have gone through those tutorials, you will already know how to solve this part. But those of you who haven't, let me just share with you how you can go about doing that. Okay, so now what we want to do is, you can calculate, since n is less than equal to 1000, right, you can calculate NCR using Pascal's triangle. And Pascal's triangle has this really amazing feature that its rows and columns correspond to NCR. So you will form a 1000 by 1000 column, 1000 by 1000 row by column, and to get the exact tutorial, just go to the tutorial called calculating large NCR values. Now if you have a 1000 by 1000, right, what is the size of that? It's 10 raised to 6, right? So a 1000 by 1000, like 10 raised to 3 into 10 raised to 3 will give you 10 raised to 6. So you'll get a 10 raised to 6 thing over here. 10 raised to 6 row by column thing, a row by column 2D matrix, which will give you the Pascal's triangle. And once you calculate the Pascal's triangle, right, so if you calculate the entire Pascal's triangle, then you just need to calculate it once. You don't need to calculate it more than once. Once you've calculated it, sorry for that, yeah. So once you've calculated it, you can always refer to that same Pascal's triangle for your NCR. Like you will always be able to do 10C1 or 100C2 or whatever, but it requires only once. So if you go back to our constraints, what was our constraint? That we can't calculate NCR every time because there are 10,000 cases. Well, the best part is, if you're using Pascal's triangle, if you calculate NCR, you calculate it once before even taking input. Okay, calculate it for 1000, and then on each input, what you have to do is just whatever is the m and t values, accordingly calculate the NCR, or what did we decide over there? It was XCT and NCT, right? So you just have to calculate those things at that point, right? And x is nothing but n minus m. So XCT and NCT you have to calculate. And how can you calculate? You just look up the Pascal's triangle, right? So for more details, you can check up the tutorial that's just before this. But yeah, so that was the trick of this question, that you should be able to calculate using Pascal's triangle the NCR. Once you do that, you will get your x value and y value, which will be of the form. So you'll get like this 1 minus x by y, where x is your XCT and y is your NCT over here, right? So you'll be able to get these values, XCT and NCT, and you'll get 1 minus x by y, which means your whole equation will come down to as something like y minus x upon y, which will be k divided by y. Okay, and all of this, by the way, because the number can be really big, is all modulo 10 raised to 9 plus 7. So again, you have to use modular arithmetic, which we've discussed before, but basically any addition has to happen with modulo. So you'll get I'm just substituting y minus x by k by y, Now if you remember, let's just go back to the question. This is the output part, right? So as I said, I'll come back to it. Now the question says in the output, what we have to do is we have to, let's say, assume the probability is p by q. I'll come to this part right at the end. I'll just explain this part at the end. But I'm saying the probability is p by q, right? Where p and q are co-prime. What does p and q being co-prime mean? It just means that you cannot reduce it even further, right? So if k and y have some common factors, reduce. What I basically mean by this is, let's say after calculating this, you get that the probability is 4 by 6. Don't keep it to 4 by 6. You need to reduce it to 2 by 3. Okay, or let's say your probability is some 100 by 200. It needs to be reduced to 1 by 2. That's what it needs to be reduced to. Okay, only then can we proceed with the further one. So p by q rational form is what we need to get to, which p and q both are co-prime, that is they both don't have any other common factors. The easiest ways to reduce k and y such that they don't have any common factors is just divide each k and y by their GCD. Okay, find the GCD of k and y and divide it by them, right? So for example, between 4 and 6 the GCD is 2, so you divide it by 2, you got 2 by 3. For 100 and 200 the GCD is 100, you divide it by 100 both of them, you got 1 by 2. So you know what to actually cut it by, like what you cut in your fractions, you can just do the GCD. So again, just recapping, use Pascal's triangle to get the x by y format, then y minus x by y is what it actually is, just took y over there and we got it. And I'm just substituting this y minus x as k, so we got some k by y over here. This k by y has to be reduced further to get a p by q format. Okay, so we have to get a p by q format over here, right? And that's what we have at this point. That is, we have the numerator as k by GCD of k comma y, where the GCD could be 1. They are already possibly in the reduced format, that's fine, right? And denominator is y, which is y by GCD k by y. Now the question doesn't end here, and this is the important part that I wanted to share with all of you about the whole modulo inverse part, which everybody was very confused about what exactly is modulo inverse. So what is modulo inverse, right? So for those of you who've seen the tutorial on modular arithmetic, you will already know this, and you can just skip this part. Those of you who haven't, let me share what it means. Okay, so y inverse mod p basically means that if you do y into y inverse mod p, right, y into y inverse mod p, you will get is equal to, one second, if you did this, this is equal to 1 mod p. Okay, so if you remember what the question says, what I need to find is, you need to find where p into multiplicative inverse of q. What do you mean by multiplicative inverse of q? Let's say you have some value y is multiplicative inverse of y raised to minus 1 is that value with which if you multiply y under modulo p, you will get 1 as the value, right? So I think a simple example could be, if I want to find the multiplicative inverse of 2 under mod phi, right, I have to multiply 2 with a certain value that once I multiply 2 with, the modulo with the remainder would be 1. So basically speaking, if I do 2 into 3 mod phi, what am I going to get? I am going to get 6 mod phi, which is equal to 1. So the multiplicative inverse of 2 or 2 raised to minus 1 under mod phi is actually 3. Okay, that is what is asked of us. That is, we have said that we have p by q, right? So we have x by y or k by y over here. We need to give the answer in terms of k into y inverse, right? Not just y, because denominator is below, we have to give y inverse. And for those of you who know, it's to find y inverse, you can use Fermat's little theorem. There is something called Fermat's little theorem, and that answer comes to y raised to p minus 2 modulo p. Now a lot of you will be confused right now. Trust me, it is nothing to be confused about. If you have seen these tutorials, again, we specifically shot these tutorials for you. If you understand modular arithmetic and calculating large NCR values, this is pretty simple to understand. It's not too difficult to understand. We discussed Fermat's little theorem a little bit. We don't go into detail of Fermat's little theorem, but all you need to know is to calculate y inverse, you have to calculate y raised to p minus 2 modulo p. How do you calculate exponents? Again, go back to modular arithmetic tutorial and you will find out how to calculate the exponents. So just summing up the entire approach, this is the inverse, and then the numerator is k, so you will multiply k into y inverse modulo p, and that will finally be your answer. And I'll show you my code as well for this, but this will finally be our answer. So while you could have done n factorial and all of that, the brute force approach will work for some of them, But for all of them, it will not work. Especially in this case, it is pretty obvious that if there are so many test cases, 10,000 test cases, you are not supposed to calculate NCR every time. You are supposed to calculate it once, and then at every time you're just supposed to call that value. And hence we come to know that since it was 10,000 over there, at every time it has to be an order 1 call, or just once, just to be able to get the value. So you use Pascal's triangle to calculate NCR. Then we get the equation in the form of 1 minus x by y, which is x being the number of xct, that is the number of ways of choosing a wrong answer from t, and or number of ways of choosing wrong answers such that all of them are t, and y being choosing t answers from the entire question bank, right? And then we get this k by y format of numerator and denominator. We reduce both of them like we reduced right now by using GCD, and then y inverse we calculate using Fermat's little theorem, and we multiply that with the numerator to get the answer, right? So yeah, this is about it. I'll just show you my code as well, so that you can get a sense of what's actually happening over here. So let me just show that code also. And for this question, I have imported math. Some of you were facing runtime errors. I believe that if you're using the maths thing, you have to click import math also. Then you will not get the runtime error. Anyway, so this is the code. I'll just start from the main part, right? So this is a multiplication function in modulo. So whenever you're dealing with modulo, it's always good to write a multiplication function, and just by using modular arithmetic, I have defined this function here. I've taken the input here. I've assumed the maximum n to be 1000, which is given to us, and the prime number is 10 raised to 9 plus 7, which is also given to us. This is the big prime that we are supposed to do. Here I've generated the Pascal's triangle, and that's a pretty commonplace approach. That is Pascal ij is equal to I minus 1 j minus 1 plus I minus 1 j modulo prime. That is, it has to always be modulo 10 raised to 9 plus 7. And this is fairly standard. If you don't know, you can just go and look up a tutorial on Pascal's triangle. This is a fairly standard approach. Once I've generated the Pascal's triangle, I go through each test case, and first I take input n, t, m. These are the two edge cases. If n minus m is less than t, print 1, go forward. That is, I will always be able to choose a known question. If m is equal to 0, I will print 0 and I will continue. Okay, that means I know 0 questions, so I continue. Now denominator is nct, so that's what this is, as simple as that. Because we calculated Pascal's once, we can just do Pascal's of nt and we'll get the answer. Numerator is xct, where x is n minus m, n minus m being the problems I don't know, the questions I don't know. So this is numerator. So now, as we said, the numerator, that is p, or in our case it was k, is equal to denominator minus numerator. Q is denominator, we got that. What is the common between both of them? There is the DCD, which could just be 1 itself. We divide both of them, so that means we've reduced it. We got the Q inverse like this. We calculated the power. I used the inbuilt function of power POW that is given in Python, but we discuss a better way of solving the power in the modular arithmetic tutorial, so you can go and check that out as well, right? And answer is equal to that is again just multiplying P into Q inverse into prime, right, under a prime modulo, and then we print the answer. Okay, and so I'll just run that and submit it as well, right? So it gets submitted, it passes all the test cases too, right? So though that is how you solve this. Again, I would highly suggest, I have seen many questions come from CodeVita which require modulo arithmetic, and they also require knowledge of Fermat's little theorem, they require knowledge of Pascal's triangle and so on. So if anything of last year's patterns are to go by, you could expect at least one question from just this, right? From this, it's pure number theory, so you can just expect one question from this. So please prepare on that. Don't take it lightly. Do prepare on these 2-3 topics that I mentioned. So yeah, in summary, this was our approach, and just a reminder to all of you to take up the coupon code CodeVita-July. You will have a 1,999 cost, and again it's going up, so make sure that you take it before 5th July 11:59 p.m. After that, it won't be valid anymore. And to know all of our upcoming announcements, please log on to the Telegram channel mentioned in the link below as well, and also view all of our past CodeVita videos in the playlist mentioned below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you liked our content. Please comment, as you would have seen on the other videos, I am replying to your comments. Not only me, our entire team is replying to your comments. So we do like your comments. Please reply to please just put some comments, and we'll be happy to help you out as well. And share this video with anybody who was stuck in this question called lazy student, or just if they're being lazy and not preparing for Code Vita, do share this and they'll come to know how much they need to prepare. So that's mainly it from my side. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. We'll be doing many more mock Vita questions, and we'll also be doing some previous year's Code Vita questions as well. Don't forget to sign up for the upcoming Code Vita mock test, which is available to all. You can sign up there. We'll post some more details on the channel soon about that. So all the best, everybody. Code Vita is getting closer and closer, but I'm sure you all can crack it. Thank you so much for joining in, and I'll see you all later. Thanks.